since those arrests on Saturday, he and other members of his force have been receiving threats, including death threats, Wolf.
Very disturbing indeed. All right, Brian Todd reporting for us. Thank you very much. And to our viewers, thanks very much for watching. I'm Wolf Blitzer in the Situation Room. You can always follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Wolf Blitzer. Tweet the show at CNN Sit Room. Aaron Burnett out front starts right now.
Out front next, idiotic, BS, completely nuts. Just some of the words from Trump insiders to describe the former president's claims of a stolen election. This is all eyes are on the Attorney General Merrick Garland and whether he will charge Donald Trump. Plus, it's Donald Trump versus Nikki Haley in a South Carolina GOP primary where Trump is backing an election denier and Haley is supporting an incumbent who had stood up to Trump. Who will prevail? And the whispers getting louder. Questions from Biden's own party about whether he should run again. I'm going to speak to a Democrat who says the president should call it quits after one term. Let's go out front. And good evening, I'm Aaron Burnett. Out front tonight, mentally gone, detached from reality, or just a liar. Well, the star witness in today's January 6th committee hearing was Trump's Attorney General Bill Barr, who says in no uncertain terms that he made it clear to Trump that the lies about a stolen election were exactly that, lies. But according to Barr and many other Trump aides who testified, Trump didn't care.
There was never an indication of interest in what the actual facts were. I was somewhat demoralized because I thought, boy, if he really believes this stuff, he has, lost contact with he's become detached from reality if he really believes this stuff.
And the so-called stuff that was being peddled by the president and his ragtag team of lawyers, well, this is how they were described by the Trump aides and officials who looked into them.
They were idiotic claims. It was bullshit, crazy, completely bogus and silly.
And the theory was also completely nuts.
Not only was there not evidence of 8,000 dead voters voting in Pennsylvania, there wasn't evidence of 8.
And tonight, new questions about whether the former president broke the law, amid revelations that Trump's campaign raised $250 million, otherwise said as $250 million, based on election fraud lies. Yet, according to the committee, most of the money went into a PAC, and a PAC that wasn't even used to actually try to overturn the results. All of this is a lot for Attorney General Merrick Garland to think about as he ultimately makes the decision, because it will be his decision, on whether to charge Donald Trump or not. Tonight, though, he is making it clear he is paying close attention.
I am watching, and I will be watching all the hearings.
Jessica Schneider begins our coverage out front live on Capitol Hill. And Jessica, what are you learning about what we can expect from the committee's next public hearing, which obviously is, again, going to be this week, scheduled for Wednesday morning?
Yeah, Aaron, we have 5 more hearings for the committee to build out its case here. So Wednesday at 10 a.m., Vice Chair Liz Cheney says that they will be delving into Trump's quest to corrupt Justice Department officials with those election fraud lies. We're expecting some former DOJ officials to testify. But today, though, was a who's who of former Trump aides who all agreed, Aaron, that there was no widespread election fraud. The January 6th committee back to spotlight how former President Trump was intent on spreading lies about the 2020 election being stolen, choosing to listen to his allegedly drunk advisor Rudy Giuliani on election night instead of the aides telling Trump he was likely to lose.
My recommendation was to say that votes were still being counted. It's too early to tell. The president disagreed with that.
Was there anyone in that conversation who, in your observation, had too much to drink?
Like Mayor Giuliani. And the mayor was definitely intoxicated.
Giuliani's lawyer denies Giuliani was drunk. It was Giuliani's advice that the former president ultimately followed that night.
Frankly, we did win this election.
The committee playing tape depositions from former Trump advisors, including his former campaign manager Bill Stepien, who was a no-show at the hearing after his wife went into labor. Multiple former officials, including a Trump White House lawyer and the president's own Attorney General Bill Barr, explained that the conspiracy theories Trump was voicing were flat out false, including the one about Dominion voting machines switching votes.
I never saw any evidence whatsoever to sustain those allegations.
I told them that it was crazy stuff and they were wasting their time.
President Trump refused to listen, despite Barr repeatedly shooting down the lies.
The claims of fraud were bullshit, completely bogus and silly, based on complete misinformation. I thought, boy, if he really believes this stuff, he has, lost contact with he's become detached from reality.
Witness testimony portrayed President Trump as grasping at conspiracy theories after he lost the election.
He said more people voted in Philadelphia than there were voters. And that was absolute rubbish. There was nothing strange about the Philadelphia turnout.
There were so many of these allegations that when you gave him a very direct answer on one of them, he wouldn't fight us on it, but he would move to another allegation.
Stepien said he considered himself part of, quote, Team Normal on the Trump campaign, as opposed to Rudy Giuliani's team, which included former Trump advisor Peter Navarro, who were pushing multiple false claims.
I mentioned at that time that the CISA, Chris Krebs, had recently released a report saying that the election was secure. And I believe Mr. Navarro accused me of being an agent of the deep state working with Chris Krebs against the president.
Pushing the big lie turned out to be highly lucrative. The committee alleging Trump raised $250 million from donors based on those lies.
On November 9th, 2020, President Trump created a separate entity called the Save America PAC. Most of the money raised went to this newly created PAC, not to election-related litigation.
The committee saying $5 million of that $250 million went to the company that put on the January 6th rally at the Ellipse near the White House that morphed into a march to the Capitol and ultimately the insurrection. And Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren even claims the committee has evidence that Trump's family members personally benefited from that money that was raised. Aaron, Congresswoman Lofgren says that Kimberly Guilfoyle, the fiance of Donald Trump Jr., she says that she was paid $60,000 as a speaking fee to speak at the Ellipse at that rally before the January 6th Capitol attack. Aaron, we've reached out to Kimberly Guilfoyle, but so far, no comment.
All right, thank you very much, Jessica. And I want to go out front now to a member of the House January 6th Committee, Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin. And Congressman, I always appreciate your time. It does seem, and you heard the reporting there, but it seems watching this that your committee is making the case that financial crimes were committed here. And of course, you know more than we do at this point. Do you believe there is a criminal case?
Well, the key point that came across today was that Donald Trump was perfectly aware that he was telling the big lie. He was being told by everyone from his campaign manager, Bill Stepien, to the Attorney General of the United States, William Barr, to all of his campaign advisors, family, this thing was over, and he really needed to let it go. I mean, Stepien was pretty clear about that. Attorney General Barr said all of his claims were bogus, nonsense, BS, and so on. And yet they continued to disseminate the big lie and then to raise a lot of money on it, more than $200 million. So again, we're less concerned with whether or not there was a specific statutory offense committed than making clear to the public that there was no rational basis upon which anyone could conclude that he had actually won the election. And nobody's contending that today. At least I haven't heard anybody challenge the overwhelming weight of this evidence.
So in the testimony you played from Bill Barr, as you point out, he said again and again, he told Trump that these conspiracy theories of election fraud, they were false and they were misguided. And then he said about Trump, quote, if he really believes this stuff, he has, lost contact with, he's become detached from reality. Now, Congressman, this is a crucial point. Do you think it is possible that Trump became detached from reality, that he really just lost it, that he started to believe all this stuff, that he wasn't intentionally misleading people? Or do you know that he knew and he did know it was a lie?
The president, the vice president, the cabinet, all of those people rejected the House of Representatives effort to get them to invoke the 25th Amendment to at least meet to consult on that question. So at this point, it's kind of moot. We have to assume that he was a rational actor, and I do assume that he was a rational actor. There was a lot of money still to be made based on this bogus BS claim, as the Attorney General put it, and they raised more than $200 million on it. You know, when a political campaign is over, it's almost impossible for the losing candidate to raise any money at that point, because nobody really wants to invest in a lost cause, a cause that's already gone. And yet he figured out a way to keep the money flowing in by claiming that he had won the election and they were somehow battling it out, even after 60 courts had already rejected every claim of electoral fraud and corruption that they had suggested.
So the only person still, you know, really putting this stuff out in detail and aggressively is the former president. He's just put out a 12-page statement, and he goes through all of this again and again. You know, look, even putting in some things here that they don't even put on Fox News because it has been debunked. But nonetheless, he's going through it here line by line. In it, he says, Congressman, I'm sure you haven't, maybe you have had a chance to read it. We just got it. But there's a couple lines here that are particularly important for your committee. He says, MAGA witnesses were interrogated behind closed doors and ordered to not record their own testimony. Yet the unselect pseudo committee has coordinated with their media puppets to broadcast their witnesses on national television without any opposition, cross-examination, or rebuttal evidence. What are the members of this treasonous committee afraid of? Why can't they let the countervailing opinion be heard? Why are they hiding evidence from the public and only showing information that favors the Democrats' tall tale? I can give you 12 more pages where that came from, Congressman, but I wanted to give you a chance to respond to that.
Well, let's start with this. There have been efforts to challenge the legitimacy of our committee, and they have all failed in court. The courts have repeatedly upheld the composition of our committee, the purpose of our committee, and the legitimate legal and legislative function of our committee. So all of that is silly. Nobody has disputed a single fact that the committee has reported. We are a bipartisan committee that has undertaken a deadly serious, solemn investigation into the worst domestic attack on the Capitol, on the United States Congress in our history, the first one to interrupt the peaceful transfer of power. So I understand that there might be more bogus, nonsense, BS claims coming from the former president, but that's just quoting his own Attorney General, William Barr, who he praised so much over the years.
You're right, he did praise him, and you're right, that is what the Attorney General, you played him saying about the president today. I want to ask you one other thing today that stood out. It got a lot of people talking, Congressman, and that was the allegations in the hearing today that Rudy Giuliani was drunk on election night. That's when he went to advise Trump to declare victory, to do it early, but the context was that he was presumably drunk. Now, Giuliani's lawyer is now denying this allegation, but I wanted to understand from you why you felt it was important to include.
I don't know that it was important to include, because I really can't tell the difference between those two conditions for him. It doesn't make any difference, because what he was spouting, as Attorney General Barr said and as numerous witnesses confirmed, was complete nonsense. And he was telling fairy tales about foreign leaders and deceased communists and so on, and it was just one absurdity after another. And I think the reason why Congressman Lofgren decided to include that portion was simply to show that Donald Trump was being advised by serious lawyers, serious campaign advisors, as campaign manager, that this thing was basically over. It was a hopeless enterprise. And on the other hand, you had Rudy Giuliani, who may or may not have been inebriated at that point, but who's recommending that he go out and declare that he's actually won the election. So that's an absurd situation, and it's one that is reflective of generally the path that Donald Trump was on. He was recycling the most absurd claims in order to tell the big lie, keep raising money, and then leading all the way up to the disaster that took place on January the 6th.
All right, Congressman Raskin, I appreciate your time as always. Thank you.
You bet.
And I want to go to Gloria Borger now, our chief political analyst. So, Gloria, when you hear Congressman Raskin, I thought that was important how he addressed the Giuliani point there. But talking about today and, where do you think we are? Obviously, we're just 2 in here. We've got another week and a half of hearings. But where are we?
Well, I think what we saw today is a portrayal of a president who was kind of this island inside the White House with the people who really worked for him, for whom he had a great deal of respect at one time or another. You have his former Attorney General, you have Bill Stepien, who ran his campaign, you had lawyer after lawyer saying, this is rubbish. You shouldn't believe this. There's nothing going on here. And then you had this president listening, apparently, and then deciding that he was going to listen to or believe, we're not sure which it is, right? Listen to or believe the likes of Rudy Giuliani and the rest, who came from the outside and kind of invaded the White House, if you will, because these were the people who were willing to talk about the conspiracy theories. It's important for people to understand, we always say, oh, I wonder what was going on inside the White House. Well, this is what was going on inside the White House. Rudy Giuliani was the Trump whisperer, and the people who worked for the president, actually worked for the president, were trying to figure out how to deal with Rudy Giuliani and the president of the United States. And so what the committee was doing is drawing a line and saying, look, he wouldn't believe them. He believed this hocus pocus. And then they're going to draw a line in the future about how that led to what occurred on January 6th, and tell the people who went to the rally that day that they were played. They were played by the president.
You know what's, when you look at this 12 pages that the former president has just put out, Gloria,
I'm looking through it.
Look, the most basic reporting has debunked every single thing in here, right? Reporting, whether you go to, Republican officials in Georgia and go through, it's bogus, okay? But the reason I mention it is that what it shows is that this election fraud lie is not going to end with these hearings. It is not going away. In fact, it is still metastasizing. You've got the former president standing up for it, and in these 12 pages making it clear, he somehow still believes that it makes it clear he could be going to run for president again, talking about how he's ahead in the polls in that regard. But you've got in Pennsylvania one of the key attorneys for the former president during this election fraud, now going to be a senior legal advisor for the Trump-backed Republican nominee for governor in Pennsylvania, Doug Mastriano.
Right.
So the very players at the core of the election lie are now core in one of the most crucial elections coming up this fall.
And of course, as he has pointed out, Mastriano himself has pointed out that if he were to win, he would be the one appointing the next Secretary of State in the state of Pennsylvania, which, as you know very well, is a battleground state. Yes, this is now very common all over the country. You've got election deniers running for Secretary of State in about 18 states, and they could win. And this is all a result of what we saw take place and still continuing under the leadership of Donald Trump throughout the country, which is that people cannot believe their own elections. And this was a president who refused to have a peaceful transfer of power, which is at the core of our democracy. If you don't have that, you don't have our democracy.
All right, Gloria, thank you very much. And next, I'm going to speak to a Capitol Police Sergeant who was trampled by the rioters on January 6th. Hearings are personal to him. He almost lost his life. So, what did he hear today? Plus, Trump versus Nikki Haley now pit against each other in a race that is an election denier against an incumbent who stood up to Trump.
What I love about Nancy is she is not a pushover.
You have another horrendous rhino known as Crazy Nancy Mace.
And Democratic doubts about Biden are growing louder. I'm going to talk to one member of the DNC who says the president shouldn't run again. Why?
We share this place, we all belong. We have to restore this planet's soul. Give it water, give it sun, room to grow. I can
So many questions about what is the federal government doing. Do you get the anger that is out here?
How concerned are you about the front line?
You don't believe that there's a racial divide here?
Looking back, as president, did you tell the story of race in America enough, do you think?
All the places I've been and all the things I've seen, all the people I've talked to, I carry with me. They're a part of what I do right here, holding the powerful accountable, keeping them honest.
AC 360, tonight only on CNN.
We've missed the globetrotting and adventures, and we're longing to get out and go.
This is living.
Uncovering a city's DNA.
Look at that.
Meeting people who will share its secrets.
It's going to be very cold.
And making discoveries that wow.
We're not doing that again.
It's a world of wonder.
Gorgeous.
Now, go and see it. Saturday on CNN, in association with Turkish Airlines.
Something out of medieval times. That is exactly what Officer Eugene Goodman today called the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Goodman was testifying at the trial of Kevin Seafried and his son. They carried the Confederate flag through the Capitol. Flag officer Goodman says Seafried jabbed at him repeatedly. Now, Goodman, you may remember, is the officer who led senators away as attackers tried to breach the Senate floor. Out front now, one of the heroes of January 6th who risked his life to protect America's Capitol, Capitol Police Sergeant Aquilino Ganell. And Sergeant Ganell, I really appreciate your time, and I'm glad to speak with you again. You know, we heard from Officer Goodman today as the second hearing was unfolding for the January 6th committee. How do you feel watching these hearings on Capitol Hill and seeing footage, Sergeant, that American civilians have never seen, but you actually lived through?
Thanks for having me, Aaron. I don't know. I think it's good that the American people get to see what actually happened instead of getting their information from one source and a source that is continuing lying to them. And it's kind of like don't believe your own lying eyes. And I think the American people need to look at the evidence. I think the January 6th committee is doing a great job presenting the information to let them know that what happened on January 6th was political and judicially a great danger to our system, democratic system, and our democracy.
So, Sergeant, today the January 6th committee played a lot of the testimony of former Attorney General Bill Barr, and specifically they played when he took on Trump's claims that the Dominion voting machines manipulated votes and that is what cost him the election. And Barr told the January 6th Select Committee that he warned Trump that this was complete nonsense about the voting machines and that for Trump to keep saying this was, Barr's words, a grave disservice to the country. But Trump continued to push that conspiracy theory about the voting machines again and again and again. And the Trump supporters who went to the Capitol, where you were on January 6th, they believed him. Here they are.
Voted early, it went well, except for can't really trust the software, Dominion software.
We voted, and right in the top right-hand corner of the Dominion voting machine that we used, there was a Wi-Fi symbol with 5 bars. So that most definitely connected to the internet, without a doubt. So they stole that from us twice.
200,000 people that weren't even registered voted. 430,000 votes disappeared from President Trump's tally.
And Sergeant, even now, when you hear this, the people who attacked you and your hand was smashed, your shoulder was torn, you've had surgery on your foot, they believed Trump's lie, and they acted violently because of it. Do you think, Sergeant, that he will be held accountable?
I hope so. And like I said, the January 6th is doing a great job laying out the evidence. It's up to, then it goes up to the Department of Justice to make that determination. I hope it's personal to me, and I hope that if the charges are warranted and there is enough evidence to make those charges, regardless who that person is or what position in our government or out of government they hold, that those people should be held accountable. Because on January 6th happened, and the person in the White House was doing, orchestrating and planning all these things. If he gets back in power, there's no saying or telling what else is going to be happen if he gets back in power. And those people who aided and abated him in terms of orchestrating this horrific day in our history should also be held accountable. I'm disappointed that some of these individuals that, especially like on today's hearing, they came forward because they were subpoenaed or they were investigating. My thing is that they should have come forward sooner during the impeachment and tell the American people what they witnessed.
Sergeant Ganell, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right, thank you for having me.
And next, 2 South Carolina Republicans who stood up to Trump after January 6th, now fighting to keep their jobs. Voters in their state head to the polls. We are hours away from that crucial primary. Will they be punished for taking on Trump? And the White House making it clear today that Biden is running for re-election after several voices in the Democratic Party are publicly voicing serious doubt.
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
In a leafy corner of Bawal National Park, a high-stakes courtship is taking place. The future of this critically endangered species in Bangladesh depends on it. The Asian giant tortoise was thought to be extinct in the country until 10 years ago, when a few were discovered in the wild. And now, conservation biologist Shawar Cesar Rahman is on a mission to bring them back.
We realize if we want to prevent extinction of the species from Bangladesh, we must take drastic efforts.
Rahman runs a conservation and breeding center for 4 critically endangered species of turtle and tortoise.
The captive bred critically endangered Asian giant tortoises, which are bred here in our center for the first time in Bangladesh. We'll be releasing these individuals back in the wild.
Working with the indigenous Merle community, he and his team train former hunters as parabiologists, or citizen scientists that collect data and monitor species to help protect local wildlife.
We're empowering them to be the guardian of the ecosystem. I do believe there are reasons to be optimistic, and It all depends on us and the future generation to make that decision and to take action.
Welcome to The Lead. We begin with breaking news. The United States has plunged into a recession. We're seeing infections at an all-time high. What's your reaction to that? Here are the facts.
The Lead with Jake Tapper.
I am Nigerian by blood, British by birth, and American by residence. It is important to me that those same strands of inclusivity that flow through me are mirrored in the stories that we tell. One World is a place where Africa has an equal seat at the global table alongside Europe, the Americas, and Asia. Every continent has a voice, and where everyone watching has a stake in the global conversation.
One World with Zain Asher, tonight on CNN.
I'm Matthew Chance in Kyiv, and this is CNN.
Tonight, hours ahead of a major test for Trump, a key primary in South Carolina, pitting a Trump-backed challenger against GOP incumbent Nancy Mace. And vocal Trump supporter Nikki Haley, the former governor of South Carolina, she's backing Mace, going against Trump. This is a crucial race and a crucial test, and Jeff Zeleny is out front.
What I love about Nancy is she is not a pushover.
Congresswoman Nancy Mace is locked in a tough Republican primary and getting a big hand from Nikki Haley, a former South Carolina governor who served in President Trump's cabinet.
You may not agree with 100% of everything she does, but she's fighting for you every day.
Her fight is complicated by none other than the former president, who's been intent on defeating Mace since she voted to certify the 2020 election over the objections of Trump and his followers.
You have another horrendous rhino known as Crazy Nancy Mace.
Along the South Carolina coastline and across the state's vast low country, the power of Trump's persuasion faces yet another test on Tuesday in two congressional races with heated Republican primary contests. Trump set his sights not only on Mace, the first female graduate of the Citadel Military Academy, but also on Congressman Tom Rice, one of 10 House Republicans who voted for impeachment.
I need all the help I can get. Okay.
As a select congressional committee shines a more damning light on Trump's conduct in office, the next round of GOP primaries offers a new moment to measure the party's mood and direction, and also highlights a rare divide between Haley, the former UN ambassador who's fully behind Mace, and Trump, who's backing her rival, Katie Arrington.
Who is excited to see Donald J. Trump? I've been waiting a couple of weeks to see Big Daddy come home, and I cannot wait.
She embraces election fraud conspiracies and accuses her rival of turning her back on Trump.
The Liz Cheney of the South, none other than Nancy Mace.
At a weekend campaign stop,
We have to nominate someone who knows how to win.
Mace told us she has no regrets over certifying the election and speaking out against the violent attack on the Capitol.
What we couldn't do is allow one person, the Vice President of the United States, to single-handedly overturn the Electoral College or the results of a presidential election, because then you're setting the precedent that Kamala Harris can do that in 2024.
Yet she tiptoes gently around Trump, and has dialed back some of those early critiques. Not so for Rice, who served in Congress for 9 years and stands by his vote to impeach, even if it costs him re-election to Russell Fry, a Trump-backed state lawmaker.
If doing the right thing costs me an election, then I'll wear it like a badge. I think Donald Trump is the past, and we need to move on.
You think Donald Trump is the past?
Absolutely. I think he was a very consequential president. I think we got a lot of good things done that lifted a lot of people. But I think he's the past now. We need to move on to somebody else.
It's far from certain whether most Republicans are ready to move on. But several voters supporting Rice and Mace say they feel no obligation to follow Trump's lead.
He misspeaks a lot, you know. I mean, I like him. I think he was a great president, but I don't agree with him coming in and trying to influence this election.
I'm a Trump supporter, and I'm also a very big Nancy Mace supporter.
And it just shows you, people can have these 2 points of view, right, in one person. So, Jeff, I know you spoke with both Mance and Rice, and they're each handling Trump, though, it seems, in very different ways.
Aaron, they are, and their records are different. I mean, Nancy Mace did not vote to impeach Donald Trump. Tom Rice did, and that could be a big definer tomorrow night when the votes are cast here. But Nancy Mace clearly is touting her America First policy, as she calls it. She clearly is hewing a closer line, trying to, really get some of those Trump voters. And in our conversations with these voters, Aaron, as we heard last month in Georgia and other states as well, people are perfectly happy to support Donald Trump and not follow his lead. Tom Rice has a much harder hill to climb tomorrow, no question at all. But, Aaron, as this is all unfolding with the January 6th hearings back in Washington, certainly reviving Trump's role in all of this, we'll see if it affects tomorrow's election.
It's going to be a crucial one. All right, Jeff Zeleny, thank you very much from Charleston tonight. And next, the whispers for Biden to step aside in 2024 are, well, not really whispers anymore. I'm going to talk to a member of the DNC who says it is time for a new Democratic ticket in 2024. Plus, chilling new video from Russian attack helicopters taking out a crucial Ukrainian stronghold.
These latest images. I'm Paulo Sandoval in Bogota, Colombia, and this is CNN.
Business never sleeps. As the sun sets in Seoul and Shanghai, deals are signed in Dubai, and Europe is already in play. New York prepares to make its first move. I'm Julia Chatterley, journalist, global market analyst, and host of CNN's First Move. Join me in the financial capital of the world for market-moving perspective on the news influencing global politics, culture, and finance. I'll speak to newsmakers, risk takers, and the ultimate game changers.
Bold moves, big deals, winning trades. It's all right here. Make CNN your first move.
First Move with Julia Chatterley. Today on CNN.
I've personally met people around the world who told me that the first way that they found out about sex trafficking was through our documentary Nefarious. And for many people, that was the turning point that they chose to commit their life to fight this issue. My name is Helen Taylor, and I'm the Vice President of Impact at the anti-human trafficking organization Exodus Cry. We are currently headquartered in Southern California. Exodus Cry began back in 2008. Our founder, Benjamin Nolo, found out about the issue of trafficking and how it was a global human rights crisis. With a background in filmmaking, he went overseas to 19 different nations and interviewed survivors, spoke with global activists and politicians. And from that series of trips, he created a documentary called Nefarious Merchant of Souls. It's been used by hundreds, if not thousands, of organizations and communities to raise awareness. It's been shown on military bases, in churches, before the UN, in the US White House, parliaments around the world. So it's really is such a testament to the power of a documentary and a story that you're able to spotlight incredibly important and urgent global issue in a way that many people beyond your immediate reach are able to hear about.
Tonight, U.S. stocks plunging. The S&P 500 down, as you can see, nearly 900 points. Bear market territory for the Dow. Sorry, down nearly 900. Look, it's been grim, and it's just more grim news, adding to the economic anxiety that has been gripping the United States. The White House insists the American people are, quote, well positioned to face these challenges. But the White House also says President Biden intends to run for re-election. Now, that's reassurance coming after influential Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez struggled to answer a very simple question. Would she support Biden in 2024?
We'll cross that bridge when we get to it, but I think if the president has a vision, then that's something certainly we're all willing to entertain and examine when the time comes.
That's not a yes.
I believe that the president has been doing a very good job so far, and should he run again, I think that I think it's we'll take a look at it.
Out front now, Steve Simonides, a Florida-based member of the Democratic National Committee. He's taken a look at it. He says Biden should announce he's not running for re-election as soon as the midterms are over. And Steve, I appreciate your time. I want to be clear. You're a member of the DNC. You are a supporter of President Biden, right? So let's just put that out there. But you don't think that he should run for re-election. How come?
Yes, and thanks, Aaron, for having me. First of all, I think Joe Biden has done an amazing job as president. He's passed some historic legislation in the infrastructure bill. He's really helped regulate ghost guns through ATF. He's helped student loan borrowers significantly since he took office. And most importantly, perhaps, with regards to the Russian aggression, he's effectively led a NATO coalition so far. The problem is, he's not, and his administration is not effectively communicating those wins, which is part of the reason you're seeing his approval ratings hover in the 30s.
So, okay, but what's your reason for, I mean, is that your reason for not thinking he should run again? Or is it just quite simply, as David Axelrod said, at the end of his next term, he'd be closer to 90 than 80? What is the reason?
It's a host of factors. The first being that the approval rating is not where it should be at this point. But also, more importantly, if you look at the polls with regards to the direction of the country, less than a quarter of Americans think that our country is on the right track. With polls like that, people are going to be looking for a change candidate. They're not going to be looking to vote for an incumbent with approval ratings down in the 30s.
So let me ask you, the former president just put out a 12-page screed about the January 6th committee. And at the end, he says something important. He says, this is merely, talking about the January 6th committee, an attempt to stop a man that is leading in every poll against both Republicans and Democrats by wide margins from running again for the presidency. They are doing everything in their power to stop me, but we can't be stopped. We have to save America. So President Biden says he's running again. Trump's statement certainly suggests that he is too, which would put the United States in for a repeat of 2020. Does that change your view?
No, I mean, no matter who the Republican nominee is, if 16 and 20 are any guide, it's going to wind up being a fascist. Our democracy is going to be at stake. The stakes could not be higher. And in that situation, every Democrat should want to put the best nominee forward. Just because we were successful with one plan of action in 2020, Things are much different in 2024 when you're talking about now he's an incumbent and he needs to wind up. The 2024 election is not going to be something that you can win remotely. You can largely campaign from one location back in 2020. In this situation, you're going to wind up having an 80-year-old man with the most pressure cooker job on the planet needing to also full-time run a nationwide campaign, which is a significant ask. And again, we're still dealing with him starting out with very low approval ratings.
All right, Steve, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And next, horrific scenes of the deadly street fighting that is now taking place in what Ukraine's president calls one of the most brutal battles in European history. Plus, Senator Chris Murphy, he has made it his mission to pass gun control laws. He's dedicated a decade to it, and tonight, he is closer than he's ever been.
Africa Avant-Garde in association with Access Bank. More than banking.
We need to start developing more writers. As a producer, I'm always on the lookout for new voices, new writers, because those are the foundations of good storytelling.
The best advice I've ever received is to never stop writing, because once you start practicing the thing that you want to get good at, you start having all those inflicting thoughts of, am I good enough?
To find your voice as a filmmaker or to tell stories that have deep impact, they have to be stories that affect you yourself. If it doesn't affect you, you can't translate that into a story. Whatever you write will be superficial. So first, if you're going to tell a story that is honest, it has to be honest to you first.
With Bitcoin, not only do we have the best monetary asset in human history, we have the best monetary network in human history. Bitcoin solved a lot of the monetary functions that we know as very expensive with cryptography and with math. And so I can escrow a bearer instrument in Bitcoin. It's worth the same amount in Chicago as it is in London, as it is in Nigeria, as it is in Argentina, and I can zip it around the world instantly and for free. What we can do is take your dollars and escrow them around the world over the Bitcoin network. So think about this. What if I wanted to send money from Chicago to London? What we can do is take dollars out of your bank account, turn it into Bitcoin, zip that value to London instantly and for free. You blink, you'd miss it. It goes so fast and it costs nothing. And then we turn it back into British pounds. That's the innovation, and that's how we use Bitcoin, the monetary network.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson.
It all starts here. Changing, fighting, creating, connecting. That's why we're here. We live here, we work here, we're from here, and we'll go wherever the story takes us.
I'm Becky Anderson in Tehran. We are in Jerusalem.
Real news that shapes our world. Exploring not just what's going on, but why.
I just want to press you on one further point.
Getting perspective on this region from this region. Places that many of us know, but few of us get to see. Observing countries on the move, still rooted in tradition. It all starts here, and that's why we're here, bringing you the world from our Middle Eastern hub.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson, today on CNN.
Afghan women are afraid that this is the beginning of your efforts to erase them from the workspace.
It's not clear. Even if we appear with the burqa, maybe they will say that women's voices are forbidden.
Did you ever imagine that you would be prevented from going to school?
Girls' education is fundamental to the dignity of Afghan life.
Do you believe that young girls will be allowed to go to school here in Afghanistan?
June 20th, a CNN concert event. Let's celebrate, educate, and lift every voice. Juneteenth, a global celebration for freedom. Live from the Hollywood Bowl, only on CNN.
Transformation, technology, new Marketplace Europe.
A Davos of difference, a WEF like no other, as leaders face historic crises.
Marketplace Europe, Sunday on CNN.
Tonight, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says the intense fighting underway in eastern Ukraine will go down in history as, quote, one of the most brutal battles in Europe. And it comes as Ukrainian military officials say they have been pushed out of the center of the crucial city of Severodonetsk. It was one of the last major cities standing in Putin's way of controlling the entire Donbass region of eastern Ukraine. Matthew Chance is out front.
There's no end in sight to this war, but its horror is plain to see. An old woman crosses herself in prayer as troops fight street to street. It's the battle here, in and around the city of Severodonetsk, where the Ukrainian president says the fate of Donbass in eastern Ukraine is being decided. But it seems more a case of when, not if, this devastated region will fall into Russian hands. And the embattled Ukrainian president is again expressing his frustration. Ukraine needs modern missile defense systems, he says in his latest address. Did we get them? No. Do we need them? Yes. On both sides, there are signs of fatigue setting in. But these latest images from the Russian Defense Ministry show its forces on the offensive. A squadron of attack helicopters hitting what Russian military officials say are Ukrainian positions. Target hit, the pilot reports. Thanks very much, guys. God be with you, comes the response. By concentrating its fire, Russia appears to be gaining momentum.
Operational Tactical and Army Aviation hit 3 Ukrainian command posts in 25 areas of concentration of manpower and military equipment. As a result, more than 150 Ukrainian nationals, 6 tanks, 5 field artillery pieces, and 10 special vehicles for various purposes were destroyed.
Of course, Russia is paying a heavy price for waging this war, what it calls its special military operation in Ukraine too. It's estimated to have lost thousands of troops and countless tanks and other armoured vehicles, some of which have been placed here in the centre of the capital Kiev on public display. But nearly 4 months into this grinding and relentless conflict, Ukraine seems dangerously outnumbered and outgunned. From the Black Sea, Russia's naval bombardment continues apace. These 4 cruise missiles fired at a warehouse of anti-tank weapons supplied by the United States and its allies, according to the Russian military. Ukraine says the missiles hit mostly residential areas in the west of the country, injuring 22 civilians, including a 12-year-old child. Of course, Ukrainian forces are fighting back, like here near the northeastern city of Kharkiv, where they say this old captured Russian rocket launcher has been turned on the invaders. But Ukrainian officials say they need many more long-range weapons from the US and its Western allies if they are to push or even hold the Russians back. And Erin, when Ukrainian officials say more, they mean a lot more. They're talking about 500 tanks, 300 rocket launcher systems, 1,000 howitzer field guns, 2,000 armoured vehicles, all to achieve what they call heavy weapons parity, necessary, they say, to end this war.
Matthew Chance, thank you so much in Kyiv tonight. And next, he has been fighting his entire Senate career to pass a gun safety bill. Tonight, Senator Chris Murphy is on the cusp of accomplishing a goal that is so personal to him.
Trends, tech, new, Marketplace Asia.
Travel and tourism in Asia. How airlines new and old are navigating a post-pandemic world.
Marketplace Asia, Saturday on CNN.
Regenerative gastronomy is meant to transform. It's meant to heal. It's more about getting to know the cycle of life. We directly connect the guest with the heart of nature. In my kitchen, it's very simple because we created a restaurant in the middle of a forest, and we don't have a menu. We choose and we select the best products from foraging, from agriculture, from our artisanal fishing.